This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by CyberReason. They're coming for it. Your personal data, your intellectual property, your business. Cyber attackers are working to take what belongs to you and holding you to ransom. Defenders don't fear ransomware, they end it. With CyberReason, defenders detect and stop ransomware that even others miss, every time. A promise backed by a $1 million breach warranty. At CyberReason, they don't fear ransomware, they end it. Learn more at cyberreason.com/ransom. Iran hasn't finished investigating its gas station cyber sabotage. NSO Group says it's going in a new, nicer direction. The Conti gang hits a luxury jewelry dealer, and another unknown group hits an upscale art dealership. The Chaos Gang is after Minecraft players who cheat. Caleb Barlow on pre-breach pre-approvals. Rick Howard introduces sand tables in cyberspace. And sugar daddies come to the world of advanced fee scams. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Monday, November 1st, 2021. Reuters and others report that Iranian officials have begun to fix blame for the nominally hacktivist attack that's afflicted the country's gasoline station since last week. Iran's head of civil defense said Saturday, quote, "We are still unable to say forensically, but analytically I believe it was carried out by the Zionist regime, the Americans and their agents," end quote. The attribution seems so far to be based more on a priori probability than on, as the civil defense chief says, forensics. The motive of the attack is still believed in Tehran to be disruption and the fomenting of unrest and dissatisfaction. According to the Tehran Times, the country's intelligence minister said the investigation is still in progress and that full details will be disclosed once it's complete. The intelligence minister said, quote, "Complete information obtained from this cyber attack will be made available to the public because what is related to the health, security, and welfare of the people must be made available to them, and the officials consider informing the public in a timely manner as their duty," end quote. Tehran counts on the vigilance and support of the people and their interest in the homeland and the system to counter and contain any further cyber attacks the country may sustain. NSO Group, best known for its Pegasus intercept tool, whose sale to and abuse by repressive governments has drawn criticism and provoked controversy, has shaken up its leadership. The company says its new strategic direction will include analytics and defensive cyber. Cybercriminals have hit two upscale brands with extortion attacks. The threat in both cases appears to be that of doxing, of releasing private information online. In the first case, Sky News reports that the Russian Conti gang has begun doxing customers, tycoons and celebrities, as Sky describes them, of the luxury jewelry brand Graf. The gang wants a large payment in exchange for a promise not to release more information. What's out so far seems relatively anodyne, mostly names and addresses that are already in the public domain, but Conti promises worse to come. If you are a client, that is, if you're a crime victim, client is Conti's cynical hood speak for victim. If you're a client who declined the deal, and deal is Conti's cynical hood speak for extortion demand, and did not find your data on the cartel's website or did not find valuable files, this does not mean that we forgot about you. It only means that data was sold, and only therefore it did not publish in free access. The emphasis is in the original that security firm Malwarebytes quotes in their discussion of the incident. Graf's comment on the incident doesn't disclose much about the nature of the attack, and in particular it doesn't say whether data were encrypted and stolen or merely stolen. The firm has notified the Information Commissioner's Office, which is opening an investigation. The second high-end cyber attack comes from the art world. The MCH Group says its high-end art dealer subsidiary, Art Basel, has also sustained a criminal data breach. MCH describes the current state of affairs on its corporate website. Quote, "We are working to get all our systems and services fully operational again as soon as possible. The most important internal and external communication channels are ensured. The staging of the planned events is guaranteed. Unfortunately, the available information and analyses indicate that the perpetrators have nevertheless succeeded in gaining access to data that contains personal data, such as contact details, of customers, partners, and employees of the MCH Group. Currently, the existing traces are being evaluated in cooperation with cybersecurity experts." End quote. In this case, the perpetrators are so far unknown, although the attack hit back in October. The data at risk appears again to be contact information for Art Basel companies. MCH Group, which appears determined not to pay the ransom demanded, offers customers who may have been affected by the breach some sensible advice. The first recommendation is to warn against the risks of password reuse. Change your MCH passwords to be sure, and if you've used your password elsewhere, change it there as well. The second recommendation is a warning against the use of breached information in subsequent phishing attacks. Quote, "We also recommend that you exercise caution when dealing with unknown contacts, such as if you are contacted by third parties by email or telephone who, for example, represent themselves as your bank, internet provider, or insurance company, and use personal details to gain your trust." End quote. As always, sensible, skeptical common sense is to be applied. Fortinet reports that the Chaos ransomware gang, generally believed to operate from China, is targeting Minecraft gamers in Japan. Not to blame the victim here, but we note that the malware hook is hidden in fishbait that purports to contain stolen game credentials which no honest player should touch. And finally, to turn to another activity you should probably avoid, security firm Avast has a warning out about a new scam. People are getting contacted over social media with pitches that read something like this: "Hey, my name is Walker, and I'm looking for a sugar baby. I would like to pay you €1,500 weekly." So hop to it, ladies, or actually don't. It's just a hoary old advance fee scam, a riff on the familiar "I am the widow of the late Nigerian prince, come on." Should you pursue it a bit, as Avast did, you might ask Walker if he's legit. Walker told Avast that, "I need a companionship, someone I can talk to online." When Avast replies, "Okay, how do I know it's not a scam?" Walker simply texts back, "100% safe." Hey, if you can't trust a sugar daddy, who can you trust in the Vale of Tears? Next week, big changes come to cyber risk quantification. On October 18th, Threat Connect will release Risk Quantifier 6, which adheres to the FAIR standards and addresses the challenges of FAIR implementation by applying automation to the cyber risk quantification problem. Threat Connect RQ introduces new scenarios that enable analysts to leverage the FAIR framework in standard and semi-automated manners. Companies can use RQ to work within the FAIR framework as they do today, while also evolving their risk practice using the power of automation. RQ helps companies evolve and better adopt risk quantification across their organization. You can now scale your FAIR risk models to evolve your risk management program by leveraging your financial data and technical environment data using the RQ risk computation engine. The result? Meaningful reports for more informed and data-driven decisions with business stakeholders. Visit the Risk Threat Response Company at threatconnect.com to learn more. And it's always a pleasure to welcome back to the show my colleague Rick Howard. He is the CyberWire's Chief Security Officer, also our Chief Analyst, but more important than that, he is the host of the CSO Perspectives podcast, part of CyberWire Pro. Rick, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
You are introducing a new segment this week, and it's something called the Cyberspace Sand Table Series. What's going on here? Are you? I was just thinking. Are you inspired by Dune that just came out in the movie theater? You're doing sand tables. What's the story here?
I wish I would have thought of that, but yeah, I'm definitely going to be inspired by Dune, but maybe
Okay.
not. So a few weeks ago, I was watching a program on Tom Brady. Now, he's, for the non-sports aficionados out there, he's the famous NFL quarterback from Tampa Bay. And
Right.
Dave, if your audience has been listening to you and me talking for the last few months, they know that we don't typically talk about sports things, all right, when we're going around, right?
I don't think either one of, well, I know for me anyway, I am not a sports ball aficionado for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you and me are more likely to talk about show tunes or superhero movies or,
the important things, right.
Yeah. My favorite topic is how I routinely get killed by 7-year-olds in my Fortnite video game, right? But but I can appreciate a sports figure who's doing something really good. And, I watch the Olympics, so I have some affection for those guys. And
Sure.
Tom Brady, whether or not you're a fan or not, you have to admit he is exceptional. He's won 7 Super Bowls out of 10 tries while playing on 2 different teams. And for the old folks out there, he's 44 years old. Now, I'm not a sports fan, like I said, but I'm rooting for the old guy, just on general principles. I'm not saying I'm old. I'm just saying. Okay, so
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I'm watching the show on Brady, and you learn pretty quickly that he spends a lot of time reviewing game film on his opponents, not just a couple of hours a week, but every day for hours, so that he can learn to pick apart the defense on the game he's going to play in the following week. And I realized that our community, the network defender community, doesn't really have an equivalent version of reviewing game film, and maybe we should.
Okay, I think I know where you may be headed with this. So, why are you calling it the Cyberspace Sand Table series?
So, as you know, I'm an old Army guy, and when my commanders tried to teach us tactics, either offense or defense, at some point in the process, they would either gather everybody around a patch of dirt or a fancy box with sand in it. That's the sand table, right? And they put sticks and rocks in it to represent both sides and go over a famous battle, like, the Battle of Gettysburg or something during the U.S. Civil War. And so by watching a physical model of the battle, you could more easily see mistakes made by commanders on the ground. And after watching the Tom Brady show, I realized that sand tables were the military's version of game film.
Okay, all right, I'm with you. So, for your next CSO Perspectives show, what famous cyber battle are you going to cover?
So for this first one in the series, I'm going to cover one of my favorite cyber battles, the 2016 Russian cyber attacks against the U.S. Democratic National Committee. And it's one of my favorites because we have a lot of information about it. There's lots of, public information about what actually happened. So during the show, we're going to talk about what the Russians did and what the Americans did, and then the impact of all of that. And bringing this whole conversation full circle, we're going to engage in some Monday morning quarterbacking about what the DNC should have done to prevent those attacks.
All right, well, it sounds like fun. And again, that is part of CSO Perspectives, which is part of CyberWire Pro. You can find out all about that on our website, thecyberwire.com. Rick Howard, thanks for joining us. Security teams rose to the challenge during a time of crisis, helping their organizations during an unprecedented period, shifting to suddenly support an entire remote staff while still keeping data safe, effectively overnight. Now, as organizations gradually and cautiously move out of adapt or die mode into the post-pandemic era, we can expect a second phase of digital transformation, resilience building. This presents an opportunity for security teams, an opportunity to reimagine data security. Code 42 believes that organizations should never compromise their speed of innovation or the safety of their data. That's why the Code 42 Insider Risk Management approach fundamentally shifts the data security mindset to focus on results that deliver business value. For resources on insider risk management, visit code42.com/showme. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by our CyberWire contributor, Caleb Barlow. Caleb, always great to have you back. I wanted to touch today on this notion of pre-approvals, sort of doing the hard work before you get breached so that when you get breached, and I think it's fair to say when you get breached, you're ready to go, right? I mean, what are some of the considerations here?
Well, I stole this concept from one of my favorite CISOs, and I won't embarrass him by mentioning who it is here, but I mean, this guy's got his act together. And one of the things that he did that I think is just absolutely brilliant is, you breached, you need resources, you need money, you need lawyers, you need outside counsel, and time is of the essence. This guy got it all pre-approved. And I just, as simple as it sounds, I'm like, that's absolutely brilliant. So a few things to think about, right? Go in and lay out a bunch of different incidents of magnitude from a level 2 incident. Maybe, there's malware on a couple of machines, but you closed it down quickly, to maybe something that impacts your network, to something more catastrophic that large portions of the company are down and it's public knowledge. Pre-approve a budget for incidents of each of those magnitudes so that if they occur, you do not need to go track anybody down. You already have budget. You can immediately start spending money. And in some cases, depending on how financial systems work at your company, I've even seen people get credit cards, what they call an event card, where these cards are ready to go. You can basically, keep them at the bottom of your desk. You pull them out. They're ready to go. They got $50,000 on them, and you can move. Just a great concept.
I can imagine some of the powers that be at a company saying, well, hold on here a second. I'm paying you to prevent this from happening. Is there an educational process that's part of this as well?
There is, because remember, when a breach occurs, it's too late to prevent it from happening. You're already right at the boom. Now it's about mitigating the damage. And the faster you can move, the faster you can bring resources to bear, the faster you can get your production, your systems, your hospital, whatever it is, back online. So in a lot of ways, what this is about is being able to move quickly to reduce that blast radius. And it's not just pre-approving financial systems. Let's also pre-approve our communications. What are you going to say? Let's get all those things, because let's face it, most security incidents, you could write today what you're going to say. We experienced an incident, we're investigating, we'll be back to you shortly with more information. Great. Get that pre-approved by marketing and legal so that it's on the shelf ready to go, and you're not one of these companies that's totally silent for 3 weeks on what's happening.
How much is this part of your overall incident response plan? Is it rolled into that, or is it its own separate thing, or do they fuzz together? How does all that work?
I think it should be totally rolled into it. And now here's the big one that people really struggle with. Who's going to make the decisions? And the wrong answer is it's the CEO or the big boss. Because guess what? They're on a plane to Australia for the next 12 hours, right? You have to make decisions with the people in the room. And you have to pre-approve who gets to make the decision. Now, my favorite question to ask people always is, if you had a devastating ransomware incident, your company was totally down, would you pay the ransom? And of course, they all say no. No, we'd never pay it. Like, okay, well, let's just pretend you really had to. Who would make that call? I don't know. Okay, where would you get the money? How are you going to get $250,000 in Bitcoin by 3 o'clock this afternoon? I don't know. You got to go through that exercise, because as much as nobody ever wants to pay the ransomware operators, and by the way, I don't want you to pay either, right? We've talked about that many times on the CyberWire. But at least think about who's going to make that really tough decision. Who's going to make the decision to shut down production or disconnect you from the internet? You got to decide that ahead of time, because let me tell you, if you got 5 executives in a room staring at each other, nobody wants to be the one making that decision.
Okay, so I suppose you could label it a responsibility, perhaps a burden, go too far to say privilege.
Security decisions are always a privilege. That's why we're security professionals, Dave. But,
Fair enough.
But seriously, it requires a level of intestinal fortitude to realize that you're in crisis decision-making mode. And the best way to facilitate that is to get these permissions down ahead of time, so when it hits the fan, executives are comfortable making those decisions and they're not waiting around to do it.
Right. It's one less thing to think about.
That's right.
All right. Well, Caleb Barlow, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Wipro. Cybersecurity is more than just keystrokes and code. It takes Wipro's elite team of cybersecurists, specialists with more than 25 years of expertise developing award-winning cybersecurity solutions. Wipro does what others only promise. Wipro, cybersecurity by cybersecurists. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Don't forget to check out the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast, where I contribute to a regular segment called Security. I join Jason and Brian on their show for a lively discussion of the latest security news every week. You can find Grumpy Old Geeks where all the fine podcasts are listed, and check out the Recorded Future podcast, which I also host. The subject there is threat intelligence, and every week we talk to interesting people about timely cybersecurity topics. That's at recordedfuture.com/podcast. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karp, Paru Prakash, Justin Sabi, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.